Welcome back to episode number 8 of Take 47 podcast. And today we'll be talking from Trump lifting sanctions on Syria all the way to another death threat on Trump. And Putin backed out of the meeting that was supposed to happen yesterday between Zelensky, Putin, and possibly Trump. So to start off the video, Harvard, who bought a Magna Carta, or a cheap copy of the Magna Carta, about 50 years ago from a London bookseller. After doing some research, somebody had some doubts as to if the cheap copy of the Magna Carta was real. Turns out that it is real. They did some research and some overlays with the original, or a real version of the Magna Carta, and it turns out that they have a copy of the original Magna Carta for about, since they bought it from that book dealer from London. And if they, for some reason, were to sell it, it would be worth around $21 billion. This is a very important document. It's based, the purpose of the document is to make sure that the king or the ruler or leader of whatever country, this was signed in 1215, so about 800 years ago, a little bit more. And this is really just to make sure that the leader or ruler is subject to the law of the land, because usually kings were really just dictators. They weren't even subject to the law, so they could do whatever they want. And Harvard has a original copy of this historic important document. This is a document that has influenced many of the constitutions around the world, including our own, the U.S. Constitution, but many others, because we want the president or the ruler to be held to the same expectations as the average person, which makes a lot of sense. Of course, there's some certain things that the government is allowed to do that regular citizens are not. That's just power granted to the government by the Constitution. But the leader of the entire government, which, in our country, President Trump isn't the absolute leader of the U.S. Obviously, there's a Senate and the Supreme Court and other courts and lots of things that would stop him from doing everything that he wants to do, which of course is reasonable and necessary, because there has to be a balance. If there weren't a balance under President Biden and President Obama, so many things would have just, everything would have happened. Everything that they wanted would have happened. Of course, it wasn't like that, thankfully. But under President Trump, he is using the power that he has been granted, and it's quite awkward that the liberals are complaining for him using the power of executive orders. Of course, some powers that the president has are unlimited, like pardons and executive orders. It really depends how much that president can do in a term or two. But the president has it's a lot of power for one single person, and the president's really just the head of the government. He's the face of our country, so he's in charge of negotiating and trade deals, executive orders, lots of things that Trump is doing. Is he's really using the power that he has. He's not, I would say, doing overreach of his power, anything unnecessary. But yeah, that $21 billion, if they were to sell that Magna Carta, could pay for a whole lot of tuition, or hey, maybe they could even pay for the taxes that they might have to pay if Trump decides to cut the exemptions from Harvard and all these other woke Ivy League universities. And next up, Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, who was quite recently called the Palestinian senator from President Trump. Kind of funny. In his interview with Sean Hannity. So here's a clip.
The leadership that's emerged, Jasmine Crockett, AOC, the Squad, Grandpa Bernie, they seem to be the most...
Well, look at Schumer. He turned out to be a Palestinian. I knew him right at the beginning. And I tell you what, Schumer's turned out, we call him the Palestinian senator. The senator from Palestine.
And yeah, President Trump is right about that, because although he is a senator from the U.S., obviously, he's actually Jewish. His origin is of Jewish origin, but he has sided many times with the Palestinian side of pretty important arguments, pretty big conflicts, because his party is very, at least the base of his party, the leaders of the Democrat Party are somewhat pro-Israel, but the base, the voters, the constituents of all these senators and representatives are very pro-Palestine, very anti-Israel. But it's not like they really have a choice when they go and vote, because either they elect the Democrats who are pro-Israel, or they elect the Republican candidate who is most likely even more pro-Israel. But Senator Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, is a very interesting personality in all the politics, especially out of the Democrat Party. They have a good amount of crazy people on that side of the aisle. But he's a very interesting one. He sided with Trump because they didn't want to close the government, because that would have been chaos and the Democrats would have gotten crushed in the upcoming midterms. But he sided with Trump on that, and he's also taking the non-traditional stance, or he's gotten out of line with his party in some certain votes to pass legislation or to block legislation. He's a very interesting senator. Of course, when Senator Schumer voted for against the closure of the government, many other senators and even some representatives who said that they could have that they might just run for Senate and take out Chuck Schumer and become the new Senate Minority Leader, including AOC and a few others, right? Because they really did not like that. They all wanted to close down the government. But Chuck Schumer was right in what he said as to, if the government were to close down, that would just give Trump more power, which in a way it would, but in a way it wouldn't. It's very interesting. It would give him more power depending on the angle you look at it. But it's Trump was pretty he kind of hit the nail on the head when he called out Mr. Schumer as the Palestinian senator. He's quite an outspoken advocate of Palestine. He's rarely sided with the Jews, and that's a very big issue for the Democrat Party. They have a few officials, governors and senators and whatnot, that are Jewish or related to Jews in some way, like obviously Mr. Schumer and Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. And honestly, just a little side note here, I'm kind of off tracking, but I personally think that Mr. Shapiro from Pennsylvania wasn't picked to be Kamala Harris's vice president. I believe he would have been a much more effective and efficient vice president. If Harris would have won, more effective than Tim Walz is very long list. Pretty much anybody would be more effective than Jazz Hands, but he really just didn't get chosen because of his because he's a Jew, which would have caused some some uprising in the party, some conflict. That's a very big wedge issue in the Democrat Party. Obviously, the Republican Party has some other issues that are kind of wedge issues, but that's like a very, very big one in the Democrat Party, between obviously some of the voters, but mostly between the voters and the elected officials. And next thing we have is Syria. So Trump and the new Syrian president, I forget his name. So Syria. So he lifted the sanctions off of Syria, which had been in place for, I believe, like about half a century now. A very long time with those sanctions. But this is due to the fall of the Bashir al-Assad regime. They were quite tyrannical, and they'd been in a civil war for several years now. But after that government collapsed, a new leader was elected, and he is an ex-terrorist, which is somewhat concerning, of course. But Trump wants to rework all of the relations with Syria, considering it's a fresh start. So a good way to do this is lifting off all the sanctions that the U.S. has on Syria for a fresh new start. Obviously, Putin and the Turkish president Erdogan, or Erdogan, I totally butchered the pronunciation, but obviously they have a big influence in who the new leader of that country would be. And although the Bashir al-Assad regime was pretty tyrannical, not great, in summary, it wasn't very good. This new leader, who's been in power for, I believe, a few months, he's obviously more, he's more of an Islamic. He's more traditional. He's closer to the Islamic roots of his country, obviously, more than the past leaders, because the past leaders, although they were very bad, they did allow some religious freedom. This new guy, we'll see what he does. It's a very interesting time as to the Christians in Syria with this new government. We'd have to see like how he's gonna treat the Christians in Syria, or really other religions also, but mainly Christianity, which is the most persecuted one. But with this new leader in power, we'd have to see what he's gonna do. But obviously, Trump helping him out with the lifting of sanctions is a great thing. Syria, like any country, deserves a fresh start with a new leader, completely different views of Syria. And I know that the Syrian people celebrated once Trump said that he would lift all sanctions imposed on Syria. So it's a good thing to have a fresh new start in the Syrian regime, and yet another country in the Middle East that's starting off with something new. And next up, Trump met with the president of UAE, United Arab Emirates, for yet again more trade deals. Trump and the Middle Eastern leaders and kings and princes are really getting the investments to really high numbers. Trump was expected to have a total of around $1.4 trillion in investments from the Middle East. Obviously, he's doing quite well, and it's always good to have good relations with all these countries, although Saudi Arabia and Qatar don't get along that well. But we should, obviously, Trump isn't owned by anybody, so he can really go trade with, make a great trade deal with China one day, and then make another one with France, and then make another one with Saudi Arabia, and then another one with Qatar, and even Iran maybe, possibly, in the next few days. We'll have to see, again, what he does with that. But yeah, Trump isn't exactly, like, owned by anybody. He's not going to, like, stick to one side, at least not in the trade perspective. Obviously, in a war, he would have to support one side or have to be a bigger advocate for one side. But of course, he doesn't have to. Like in the Russia-Ukraine, I believe he's being pretty fair to both sides. Obviously, one side isn't that willing to cope with the other side. Putin, of course, who, by the way, also just backed out last moment in the meeting with Zelensky. He just said that he would send representatives instead of going, which is honestly, like, I'm starting to doubt as to, does Putin really want to end to this war, or is he, like, really trying to push the limit on Trump, see how long he can get away with the war. But we're still trying to see what's going to happen with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Obviously, it's a very big conflict. It's escalated, but we don't want it to escalate anymore. We obviously want to start with some de-escalation, but Europe isn't really helping with that. I'm not sure what the coalition of the willing might do, considering Putin has declined that ceasefire and now has rejected to meet in person with President Zelensky and President Trump. Although I do believe that a new meeting will eventually happen with President Trump and President Putin directly. President Trump announced that in one of the recent press conferences or interviews. But yeah, they should hopefully meet one-to-one and have some diplomacy talks on that terrible war. Okay, and now on to the biggest story of today's video. It will take up the biggest portion of today's video. So you might have seen or heard or seen some headline about this in the media. This really happened yesterday. Obviously, it's still going on today. And so far, what I have is that the former FBI director, James Comey, he was the FBI director under President Trump for his first term. Obviously, kind of backstabbed Trump in some ways with investigating Trump and the Russia hoax. But he's not exactly the most loyal person to Trump. After near the end of Trump's term, obviously he sided with Biden-Harris, and now he's still a pretty outspoken critic of Trump. He's pretty anti-Trump after the Trump's first term ended. He's been on all these liberal media outlets criticizing Trump, but the point is that yesterday, I believe yesterday, he made a post. I'll probably show you the post here. But he made a post that he found some seashells on the beach with the numbers 8647. So obviously the 47 is for President Trump. The 86 is a slang term. It can mean several things. In the cooking or hospitality industry. It can mean to get rid of, or usually in like restaurants, it means to like get rid of a dish or even a customer, as in, kicking them out of the shop or the place. But in more military and in pop culture, 86 can mean to get rid of, as in to kill or murder or execute judicially, according to the to the dictionary for slang. And the 86 is, to be in more detail, the 86 is, the 8 stands for the 8 feet. A coffin, sorry, not a coffin, a grave is usually about 8 feet long and 6 feet, 6 feet underground, obviously, 2.5 feet in width. So this can mean, obviously, to execute or kill somebody. The Mr. Comey isn't the only one to have made posts about this. Obviously, there's a few other liberal, obviously, journalists, and I believe the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, has had a little sticker, 8645. Obviously, when Trump was before Trump got elected, he was only the 45th president, so that's the sticker that they had. But now he updated that to the 8647, which is a death threat on President Trump. Obviously, the top intelligence officials are already on this. They're all investigating, investigating the guy, because even though he isn't the FBI director anymore, he still has some power and some influence and some connections lying around in the FBI. That's why I believe President Trump, but also the new directors of intelligence and the FBI and the CIA should really just clean up their departments and remove all the unnecessary and ineffective employees. Obviously, just keep the essential, cut the fat, but not cut the muscle. But we should really just trim on all these federal agencies, because they really bloated over the years, especially since 9/11, which gave the government a ton of power, sent us into wars in the Middle East. We're not exactly very popular around there, other than the Arabian Peninsula and Israel. That's pretty much it. All the other countries pretty much hate us. They would nuke us if they could, most likely. But the former director of the FBI deleted the post and apologized, apparently, about the post, which I really doubt that what he's saying in this apology is very truthful at all. Here's what he said. So, I posted earlier a picture of some shells, and I saw today on a beach walk, which I assume were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associated these numbers with violence. So he took it down. And obviously this is just a gigantic lie. You're telling me that the director, former director of the FBI, who obviously worked prosecuting and breaking all these codes, and obviously he knows some slang, doesn't know what 8645 or 8647 means. That's such a big lie. It's really despicable what these people can lie about and think that the American public is so stupid to believe what they're lying about. It's really just, it really amazes me every day how much they can lie and think that we're just not going to notice. As if there weren't plenty of smart people in the country. But, I mean, yeah, this is just yet again another reason, exhibit 346 as to why the Democrat Party lost this last election. Obviously, the media, endless fake cover-ups. Biden is sharp as a tack, more like a tic-tac. But so many lies and so many cover-ups on President Biden and the Biden-Harris administration. And, even the New York Times, I believe they, after the election, once Trump was already in office, this second term, they released some numbers that, oh yeah, we lied about this, we lied about that. We lied about Biden's mental health decline, which is, it's a bit late. That would have been kind of useful about 10 months ago, maybe even a year ago. When we started seeing this decline very evidently, especially in the Biden's re-election campaign. But the offense committed by Mr. Comey is obviously already under investigation by all the intelligence officials. This is punishable by very big fines for threats to the president, vice president, or anybody in succession to the presidency, or the vice president-elect, president-elect, up to 5 years in jail and some very, very big fines. But he should honestly be treated as the law suggests that he should be treated. Because how many times is it really going to take? And if he doesn't, how many times is it really going to take of death threats and even assassination attempts for the government to actually act up and use some of its power to really just stop all these threats and assassination attempts? Because last year we saw 2, technically 3, but let's just say 2. But yeah, we saw 2 official assassination attempts on President Trump's life before he was president. And we've still got 4 more years, about 4 years. But he made this threat while Trump was specifically in the Middle East, which, as I mentioned earlier, we're not exactly very popular over there. Obviously, Trump was in pretty safe countries, countries that are pretty solid against terrorism. But specifically, I think we all know what the Middle East is known for. Not a very peaceful region of the world. But the former FBI director is under investigation, and he's already getting checked out by all the intelligence officials. President Trump, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Tulsi Gabbard, and the head of the Secret Service are all aware of this, so they're already investigating, and hopefully he does get treated according to the law, because this really has to end. You never really see this from the right. All the assassination attempts that I can think of currently, or even attempts to attack the president, are all from the left. Obviously, Trump, the shoes that Bush was able to dodge. Reagan was obviously shot, but that was not really from the left. That was just a crazy guy. President Gerald Ford, President Kennedy was kind of the exception, but again, that wasn't really from the right. It's a very interesting case, but so many things, bad things come from the left. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video. It should be coming out soon. See ya.